I accidentally hit the crickets along with the theme intro music. I haven't done that before. This is the harp sound. Some applause and laughter. All right, fun now. This is the 39.6 Facebook Live Finance Show. Also broadcasting live to YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. 39.6, that's 39 with the numbers, followed by POINT and the number 6. Today we are going to continue tax week. Last night I did an episode really late and went through quickly my new tax graph, which compared married filing jointly, head of household, and single for marginal tax rates, effective tax rates, and total federal tax. Now, it was a little busy of a slide, and when I posted it this morning in the Facebook group, 39.6 community, a number of people were asking about the marriage penalty. Yes, this is taxes. If you don't want to hear about taxes, Facebook user, maybe just tune in next week. Although it's like all over the news, and I do need to do a talk about that. We'll get back to that at some point. So what does this mean? Yeah, so no marriage penalty refers to taxes. So before, back in the 39.6 days, where the top tax bracket was 39.6, well, when you're married and you're both high earners, you pay more tax than you would if you were not married. You are literally paying a cost to be married. So I think when my wife and I first became attendings and we were then married by 1 year, I think our marriage penalty might have been around $30,000. So it was approaching like $100 a day to be married, like $4 an hour to be married. That's a lot of extra money for the privilege of being married. But, if you're married to the right person, it's worth it. Okay. Yes. Yes, your spouse can certainly drag you down. All right, Vina. Okay, so back to our topic is taxes and marriage penalty, which actually was one of the nice things about the new Tax Cut and Jobs Act, is that it basically got rid of the marriage penalty. People are so used to it, people think it's still there. It's not really there. And we're going to go through samples. So I took yesterday's graph and I made it way simpler. I got rid of the marginal tax brackets up on the top, and I got rid of head of household, because head of household and single are very close to each other, especially at the higher numbers. And just to make this a lot easier, I got rid of all of that for this demonstration. I also put in the amount of tax that each increment of $100,000 of income would correspond with for single or for married filing jointly. Single being the row on top and married filing jointly being the row on the bottom. And I think I realized at the end of yesterday's episode, you can't see my mouse. So I keep pointing. I keep pointing and that wasn't there. Okay, so if I point on the picture itself, I keep pointing on the screen that I'm broadcasting to, that does not work. Okay, so I'm going to point on my screen of the picture, and then hopefully that should broadcast across. So, first of all, when it makes sense to get married. So one of my old friends was asking about, should I ever not file married? Well, there are some reasons why you might not do, from like an asset protection standpoint, or others, maybe student loans. But in terms of just straight up simple, one person earns money and the other one doesn't, if you have a choice between filing as married versus filing as single, or married filing separately, well, if you look at these two green lines, they never cross each other. It's always cheaper to file as married. So if you make $1 million a year and you are dating somebody and that person earns zero earned income, doesn't mean that don't make money, but they have zero on their taxes. And you're $1 million a year on your wages, on your W-2. You get married and your tax rates decrease because you're switching brackets, and instead of paying $330,000 in tax, you're paying $298,000 in tax. You save yourself $32,000 by getting married. Okay, that's pretty cool. So if you're a very high income single person, at least from a tax perspective, not asset protection here, taxes, being married will reduce your tax liability by a lot. So let's pretend you are dating a teacher and that teacher makes like, I made $16,000 my first year as a teacher. $16,000, probably more like $25,000 now. But $25,000 as a teacher, this tax savings of $32,000 is more than the income of the teacher. Now, even if the teacher made $50,000 and they were paying tax on it, it would like be a wash. So you could get married and all of that income that the person was married making as a teacher is basically just tax savings for the other person. So it's a wash. Your total take-home pay between the two people is the same. Now, all right, so let us go through an example where we actually have both earners, and we're talking about people making at least 6 figures, okay? So let's take 2 people that each are making $500,000, and they are single, okay? So that's $145,000 of tax each person would pay, and that would correspond to a 29% effective tax rate. You see up there? 145,000 divided by 500 is basically 145 times 2, and then divided by like 1,000, right? So that's 29%. So 145 is times 2 is 290, 29. I might have used the wrong multiplier or factor of 10, but you get the point. So 29% tax on $500,000 is $145,000. If 2 people are each making 500, 145 each is a total of 290. Okay. If they get married, they're making $1 million together and they pay $298,000 in tax. So now there is a marriage penalty of $8,000. Okay, so $8,000 divided by 365 days, meh, you're paying $20 something a day to be married. Not horrible, okay, but you are making $1 million in the situation, so not the worst thing. But still, if you were each single making $500,000, you would lose an extra $8,000 in tax. Now let's go to somebody making $400,000 and someone making $600,000. So $110,000 for the person making $400,000, and that would correspond to a 28% effective tax rate. And then the person making $600,000 pays $182,000. That corresponds to just over 30% as an effective tax rate. So you have 30% and you have 28%. So that averages out to like 29%. You put them together, that's $292,000. If you get married, you're paying $298,000. So it's like a $6,000 tax penalty. Now I am rounding numbers off that I put on the graph, so it could be maybe $7,000, it could be maybe $5,000, but it's a small difference. Now, if you are at $300,000 and $700,000, so the person making $300,000 has a 25% federal effective tax rate as single. So 25% times 300,000 is $75,000. The person at $700,000, they have a federal effective tax rate of 31%, 31.14%. Multiply that by $700,000, gets you at $219,000. 219,000 plus 75 is not $294,000. That is very close to the $98,000. That's a $4,000 tax penalty. Okay, now let's look at $800,000 and $200,000. The person making $200,000 is still a lot of income. This graph, a million, right? So it was small, but it's still a lot of money. $200,000, $41,000 income corresponds to a 20.5% federal effective tax rate. Okay, so most Americans are over here or lower. Even most married people are over here or lower. But if you're single making $200,000, which is a good income, you're paying about 20% federal effective tax rate for $1,000. Then we look over to $800,000, and you're over here at $256,000. That's a federal effective tax rate of around 32%. Okay, so you go from 20% up to 32% between $200,000 and $800,000. Now remember, Physician on Fire's tax brackets, tax return, he was over here in the just over $200,000 range. He paid about $50,000 in tax. But if you combine these two together, the $41,000 and the $256,000, you are at $297,000. So that is just a $1,000 tax penalty, marriage penalty, because $297 versus $298. Now, if you have somebody at $100,000, okay. Now remember, I gave the example earlier of the teacher who makes like $30,000. If you make $15,000, $100,000 of income, your effective tax rate, of course, is 15%, because 15,000 over 100,000 is 15%. So $15,000 of tax, and at $900,000, you're actually paying $293,000 in tax. You're at a federal effective tax rate of almost 33%. Okay, now notice this 293 is very close to the 298 that the married couple making $1 million is at. So 15,000 plus 293 is actually $308,000. So you are actually going to save yourself $10,000 in tax by being married. So it's highly advantageous for lower income people and high income people. If they are together to get married, you will actually save money in tax and bring more net income into the relationship. Okay, from a strictly financial tax perspective. Now, there are other things you can do just to understand how the tax brackets work. When I first made my graphs and published them a couple years ago, people often ask me about single, and I would just tell them, just take the bottom number, divide it by 2. So the number on the x-axis, you can just divide it by 2 and look at the effective tax rate, and then multiply that by your income. It's complicated, but not that much. So let's pretend you $500,000 of income. Actually, let me use a even number. So $600,000 of income is $151,000 for married filing jointly. Now, if you're single, you just divide this 600 by 2, and if your income is $300,000, it would basically be $151,000. Okay, so let's just look at how this works. That's if 2 people making $300,000 would be there. I'm confusing myself here. Let me just show you an example. So $600,000, $151,000. If you are married, that's $151,000. If you are single, you look over here at $300,000. You look at $75,000 of tax if you're single, and you double that. So 75,000 times 2 is 151. Okay, let's look at $100,000 single. 2 people making $100,000, $15,000 times 2 in tax is equal to $30,000. If you have $200,000 of income as single, that's $41,000. Multiply that by 2, you make $400,000 is $82,000 if you're married. Okay, 300, we did this, $75,000 times 2, 150. Okay, now $400,000, $110,000 single times 2, look at $800,000 is 224. So 110 times 2 is 220, but $800,000 married is 224. So it's just $4,000 here as a marriage penalty. And we did 500 times 2 already. $145,000 twice would be 290, but really it's 298. So as you can see, as you get to higher numbers, there's more of a marriage penalty, but it's still small. It's less than $10,000, all the way up to an income of $1 million. That's less than 1% marriage penalty. It's quite small, whereas it used to be substantially higher, like maybe 3, 4, or 5%, maybe higher than that. And that's just for being married. That's aside from all the other taxes. So the tax system previously significantly benefited people who were married and with, especially if only had one spouse working. But when you have 2 earners, it used to penalize you. Not so much anymore. That to me is one of the significant advantages to the system, but there are pros and cons. But they're the numbers. So you can see them, how they work. It's pretty simple how it works currently because the numbers are relatively linear when comparing single and married. Also, single and married filing separately are exactly the same tax brackets. Okay, so they don't have a separate tax bracket for married filing separately. It's exactly the same as single. Now, head of household, which I mentioned yesterday, so that's like an adult with a dependent. Okay, like a single father, a single mother, for example, you get a slight deduction for that. Your standard deduction increases, which means you get a little bit more money that's tax-free at the 0% bracket. But then it basically just follows the tax brackets for the same as a single person. So you save yourself like a few $1,000s in tax by being head of household. Is kind of like this having a dependent, but you already also have a dependent, so you actually get like a double bonus in comparison to being single. Okay, so that is it for today's episode. Let me go back, see if I missed any important comments here. So thank you. I tried to make this easy to understand to the best that I can, and I try to clean out the stuff that didn't need to be there. I'll post this in the Facebook community so that you guys can have a copy of the photo, and I think it's very helpful just to see this because I made these graphs because I've never seen these graphs made, and I think they're so valuable just to see it in front of you. Yes, I don't know what number we were referring to, but a quarter of an Indian wedding cost. That might be like the marriage penalty. Yeah, a wedding is easily 6 figures. Okay, I think that is it for tonight. And tomorrow we will do episode number 86. Until then, again, this is 39.6 Facebook Live and YouTube Live. This is not legal, financial, accounting, any other advice. It's just for entertainment purposes and mine. Until tomorrow, again, our sponsor is the Medicine, Marriage, and Money podcast. Episode 3 was launched this morning, starring the one, the only, the Tiffany Moon MD. Check it out. I make a short cameo in there. All right. Until tomorrow, take care.